He charges up an arrow. He can't kill off Jack Spectra. He tries to get away from Jankos, but he will not escape today. The shutdown to Jankos, and Heretics get the ace.
And it's just another 5v5 fight, and what a beautiful ultimate from Ruby, landing onto, I think, 3, 4, maybe even 5 members, just completely tore apart this Fnatic lineup. But with those death timers, Heretics is looking to end the game.
Who is up? Wonder in 17 seconds.
Yeah, I don't know if they can actually end.
I think it's
just
doubling
yet.
hib angle. Ebby tanking the tower here will at least be the mid inhib. The bot inhib is going to fall as well. Rux
I think
up.
they should recall. Yeah.
I agree with you, Betty. They will do exactly that. As soon as they split their focus, you have to feel they were aiming to go back. Baron up in a minute, and we'll have another look at that bot lane.
Yeah, so
fight.
if we can also get some slow-mo observers when we actually do get to see Ruby's ultimate. The initial idea here from Fnatic is really good, but watch what Ebby does here. He shields up, ults away to create space, and then keep track of Ruby in the fight. I'm trying to find him myself. Able to dash in from the backline, completely catches Fnatic off guard. 4 members end up getting hit, and this just creates so much space for Jack Spectra to tear apart this Fnatic lineup. Reckless is doing what he can from the back lines, but the threat that is this Varus is just so much weaker than it was compared to earlier in the game. The Rise doesn't quite have the range to match the damage that's coming out from Heretics. And now finally Heretics have found themselves with the gold lead.
It's the power of the Unbreakable as well. Anathema's chains finish on Mercer. Wouldn't be surprised if that's on Humanoid at all, just to reduce any of that damage coming out. Could of course be on Reckless as well. There's a few targets that you could prioritize here. Now, Fnatic going to try and step forward towards this Baron. Vision Denial, the name of the game. Baron started by Heretics, already down to 6,000 HP. Razork trying to get in the pit. Is he gonna steal it? Oh! Ruby takes it instead. Razork cease and desists. Jack Spectra, but he's not really going to be able to do too much. And Emperor's Divide on the backline as Ebby distracts 3 members of Fnatic. Jack Spectra on a killing spree as Razork will fall. Ebby in the midst of 4 is unkillable, unstoppable. Cassante delivering presence to Team Heretics. Call him Cassanta because he is delivering the win.
Heretics with another massive team fight, and they just play the fight beautifully. I thought the Wonder was going to decimate Heretics on the back line, but a good ultimate once again from Ruby stops him from getting onto the back line, and it secures the team fight win for Heretics. They're looking to go 3-3. They're looking to bring back this game and secure a massive win over Fnatic.
What a win it would be. Gets them out of that danger zone on their way to the group stage. Fnatic, though, after an early lead, still trying to hang on to some sort of hope. They do still have strong carries. Rise and Gwen at this stage in the game are nothing to be trifled with. The chain of corruption coming out, but Fnatic's Nexus towers are under siege and they have fallen. Wonder pops the stopwatch, but pop goes the Nexus. Team Heretics claim the victory.
What a chaotic game from both sides. But at the end of the day, Heretics, they stayed true to their win condition. Jack Spectra needs to be given so much credit for that win. His individual play off the back of that single target focus that came down in the river was monumental in swinging the game back in Heretics' favor. The fact that they were able to win that fight, they were able to stabilize the game, was so crucial for them to buy a little bit more time and then turn the game into a win. Well played by Heretics. I think that it was good to see a strong early game from Fnatic.
Yep.
I was pleasantly surprised with what they were able to do. We got to see Humanoid unlocked on the map just a little bit. We got to see Fnatic with some firm control. But then, play after player, Razork getting picked here and there. Things just slowly started to fall apart. Fnatic couldn't maintain that control, and Heretics was quick to pounce.
Yeah, a few messy team fights in the mid game, causing Fnatic to stumble and fall. Heretics very happy, obviously, with their win. 3-3 now, as you say. Gets them away from the bottom of the pack, from Astralis, from XL. Heretics next week have XL, Mad Lions, and BDS to play, so not an easy route for them towards that group stage. Fnatic have Mad Lions, Astralis, and SK, so nor an easy route for them. SK at the moment on a tear. And obviously Mad Lions sitting up near the top of the table as well. Your player of the game votes at LEC on Twitter, Ebby, Ruby, and Jack Spectra. I think you can make a case for all 3 of them. Jack Spectra had a few spectacular moments. Ruby with that slide and glide into that final team fight, or team fight before last, I guess. And then Ebby, just, he was so down in the dirt, man. That guy was like 2.5K down the entire game.
Yep.
And still had a massive impact when it came towards the later portions of the match.
He's like assuming that the stat is right, like again, I don't have the up-to-date stats, but he's got
I can look 'em
3
up.
wins of the 5 wins that Casante now has in LEC.
Yeah, we can look it up. We'll just keep talking.
Excuse me,
I can't look it up. We have to pass it over, apparently.
We
So
do have to pass it over.
I was going to look up stats, but instead, what is more important than an interview with Jack Spectra? Trouble standing by.
Thank you so much, Medic, and thank you, Jack Spectra, for joining me. Congratulations, of course, on the win. And honestly, what a journey it has been for you, especially with 2022 being a little bit, for roller coaster, going through the motions. Now, bringing down huge names in the scene.
Yeah.
How does this feel for you?
I mean, it feels really good. I mean, Reckless was one of the players I was really excited to play versus. Even aside from everything that happened with the whole K-Corp thing, he's been a player that I always looked up to, and I think he's the most accomplished ADC in the West. So he's been someone that I always thought he has such a crazy work ethic and the results he's shown. So being able to play on the same stage as him and beat him is very cool.
Well, it just shows how much of a work ethic you have to try and get here and do that and get that result yourself. Now, yesterday was the day before. You were talking with the desk.
Yeah,
and you were chatting about a lot of the social media pressure coming out.
Yeah.
And this is something that a lot of players don't talk about, because behind the player, there's a brand, there's a name, there's social media, there's growing your influence and your viewers and how they see you.
Yeah.
And how has that affected you being now on the big stage?
It's been tough. I think, especially, there comes a point where you know that people are saying negative things, even without reading it. It's some weird thing your mind does. If you play bad, you know that everybody will say that you played bad, even if you don't go out of your way of reading it. And I think, after yesterday, at first it felt fine, because it was okay, we got stomped. And then I rewatched the game, and oh my God, that was painful. I could not sleep. I think I slept, not enough tonight or last night, after rewatching that and seeing the basic mistakes we did, or that I did. And all that I could think about was how I wanted to play it again. And if I did, I feel we would have had a different result.
Yeah, I'm glad the adrenaline got you through today to get that big W. And it's really nice to just hear the perspective about how a lot of the times, how social media does affect the player who's trying to grow the brand, who's just made it here on the LEC for the very first time. Now, talking about social media and influence, I wanted to...
Up for game 2. Welcome back to the LEC Winter Split. My name is Quickshot. I quickly want to run you through some of the stakes at hand with our fancy new tool when we look ahead to XL versus Team Heretics. Now, very quickly, if you're looking at this, the first game of the day, stylize versus SK, has already been locked in and factored into our standings. If you take a look at the win-loss records, and specifically this percentage, this tells you the percentage of remaining scenarios in which a team will lock in the top 8. If Team Heretics win this game, not only will their percentage jump to 100%, meaning they lock top 8, they will also lock in G2 Esports, as well as Mad Lions and BDS. Let's uncheck that one for now. So crucial, if you're a fan of any of those teams, Heretics can lock in a whole bunch. Now, what I want to focus on is XL Esports, who right now are sitting with a 1-5 record with a 13% of remaining scenarios to make into the group stage. If they lose this game, that drops to 0.4%. And just for example, if they lose tomorrow to SK, what this means is there's no way that they can lock in a top 8 without a potential tiebreaker scenario. Lose today, lose tomorrow, only 0.8% of those scenarios allow them to do that. I would like to highlight just a few other examples, though, where if we take a look at, say, BDS winning the game, keep your eyes here on XL's chances to lock in. It starts dropping. If Fnatic win, all of a sudden the chances drop as well. But they do still have many scenarios in which a tiebreaker game is possible. It's one of the first true experiences where literally every single game counts. We'll keep using this tool, keep showing you how it impacts all the different teams. But for now, hopefully there's not too many numbers. We're going to head over to Law and the rest of the analysts.
Thank you for all the info, quick shots. So it's not all doomed for Astralis, XL yet. but they need to win this one. And I'm not talking about the standings only, but only to prove that something got better over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, are we actually talking to me? Do you just want to move on to your...
Yeah, when do we get onto my guy? When do we get onto the guy on Heretics? Because we can get onto that in a bit, but of course with XL, so many things that they have to address first. There's a lot going on there under the covers in terms of like what's happening with the jungle, what's happening with support. They don't really have a lot of building blocks to work with right now.
We'll get back to them a bit later, but as you said, focus on your man in the top lane on the side of Heretics.
So
and
hard.
Is this guy gonna get away with playing Cassante for the 7th game in the LEC this year, Nightmare?
I'm not going to speak, Namero. Just do your thing.
Awesome. So I've covered this guy for an awful long time. This guy has got so many achievements over in the LGL. And one of the most dangerous things this guy can do is make you think he has a small champion pool, because he doesn't. Actually, this reminds me of a very similar period of time. Spring 2020 LGL set had just been released, and he was playing that whenever it was available. And he was doing very
On blue side, for me, that is a surprise. That's not the kind of ban you want to see on blue side.
Exactly, because on blue side, you're looking to be first picking one of these champions, and there are an awful lot of first pick priorities, but having that real solid rock in the top side has been a hallmark of the meta, and we're finally going to get to see another Ebby champion. It was something that everyone in Heretics was really tweeting about. You saw Seal, Ebby, and Peter Dunn saying, oh, we're going to play this again. Whereas Heretics, they've got an awful lot of these first picks, the Maokai and the Ashe being taken away very early. Those are seen as the premier blind picks in the meta.
Yeah, and I really wondered in the beginning if they were just trying to overload the draft, leave open any comfort for the bot lane instead, but also seeing them ban away a lot of these AD carries themselves does leave less leeway for the bot lane, but with Maokai banned away and Sejuani not looking to be the priority, so I'd say just going to go straight from that Elise. And we talked about how we wanted more influence from his specifically. You need to do that very early into the game with a pick like Elise.
Yeah, and Elise has kind of changed her identity away from like the level 3 top lane dive champion we saw in earlier seasons.
It's all about bot lane.
It's all about bot lane. I mean,
Here it is again.
Elise can go anywhere. And I have waited so long to see that officially. This guy, man.
First pick Elise here on the side of XL, and immediately answered by a Draven.
Yeah, so I really like this. If you're not familiar, well, obviously we've talked a lot about Jack Spectra, but the fact is he used to be just a Draven one-trick pony before he really made his mark.
So many games of it in the last finals of EU Masters, which he won. You know, this guy is his signature pick too.
And that goes back to the fact that we were talking about bot lane. Draven is one of these picks that rarely ever loses on the first wave. So the fact that you can try and take charge of that, potentially get a counter pick on 3 here instead or save it for later, is really solid for Jack Spectra and Mercer in terms of taking charge. And as the second pick for Yankos, we do get the Sejuani now that Elise has been taken away.
So Sejuani becomes more and more dangerous as the game goes on, especially when you start getting around that first Herald fight of the game. Sejuani ultimately kind of comes on board.
And I like this champion because I think it can be flexed either mid or top lane.
It can be. We've seen a couple of players, well, we've seen Humanoid play it in the LEC.
Yeah.
We saw UCal play it over in the LPL. It's kind of making a bit of a resurgence. You can see it into a lot of your melee laners topside. Maybe it's trying to predict that Ebby is going to pick something like a Renekton or a Gnar, which Jace has typically done pretty okay into. But you've already got some melee synergies you need to be worried about that can shut down Jace early.
Yeah, so right now you need more range as well. I'm looking at Ruby now, thinking about his champion pool. We've seen him prefer the Asir so many times as well. There's no need for you to kind of go for the last pick on the support just yet. You have the red side leeway. But with the Jace already locked in, they're kind of calling, well, we don't think it's going to be flexed. We think this is just going to be towards the top side. So we're just going to put in the Jax now. We can ban out mid laners and supports and just keep the counter picks for ourselves on red side.
So worth noting, Ebby has never been a huge Jax player, even when it has been meta for various points in time. Of course, Ebby's played since 2014, so he's been around for an awful long time to do that. Actually, Ebby and Yankos are the oldest jungle top duo in the world in terms of any competitive scene. So you can, even over the course of that very long career, Ebby's not really gone towards that pick. However, he's been playing an awful lot on stream. He's been playing an awful lot in scrims as well, bringing it up against potentially flex Jace, but banning away some things that could go into the top side if the Jace is flexed mid.
I'll be honest, I actually thought that there was kind of no way that the Jace was going into the mid lane. And the reason why I thought that in that instance is because usually we see Vito be so happy about his comfort picks. So seeing you suddenly go for more new picks like the Jace mid as well could be really interesting to see. We did actually see him pick up Twisted Fate not too long ago, which was his first ever career pick. So maybe he is trying to evolve that champion pool a little bit. But you can see from Heretic sides, they continue to ban out the top laners. So they actually think that the Jace is going into the mid lane.
Or rather, it's just solidifying it as going top. It's like, look, you think you have flex potential here, but if we ban things you want to really put into the top lane, if the Jace was going to go mid to get a better matchup into that Jax, you're not going to have that same ability to do so. This does mean you're not going to get a lot of support bans. You could have potentially banned 2 supports and then gone for a third pick on 4 to try and get a much better bot lane. I actually wonder now if you save. I actually wonder if you save support counter pick for last, given the importance of bot lane that we've been talking about.
I think when you see Elise on enemy team and you know the fact that it's going to be a very bot lane centric early game here, you want to give your bot lane as much power as possible. So I think saving that support counter pick on R5 would be the best thing, and maybe look for Syndra or Orianna in the mid lane. Just go with something that's super standard with a control mage that's not too difficult to blind pick, and yeah, there we have it.
And I guess when you have Victor and Azir, then Orianna is the best next thing we have here. What do you answer with on the side of Excel with the 2 picks you have?
Well, it really is a question of, do you have any top laners left you want to take into the Jax? If you don't want the Jace there, is Odo comfortable taking it into that matchup? And then, of course, you've got to look at whatever you're picking into the Draven as well. You can go for a bit of early lane shove and just try and look to lockdown laning phase. Go for something like a Karma.
Yeah.
The question is, are you looking for that lane shove there, or are you actually looking to kill as well? Varus obviously has a lot of burst early.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're going to blind pick one of the melee engages, there's usually always a good counter to it on the opposite side. Even if you were to lock in Leon, and Mercer is the kind of guy that wouldn't actually mind blind picking, or not blind picking, counter picking with the Thresh as well. I think Karma is the safest blind you can do here. You can take wave control. It's decent into Draven. Even if they go for a lockdown CC composition with a support themselves over there, it's super safe. Blinding the Braum kind of says that you are anticipating that they're going to go for an engaged support as well themselves. But if you were to go for a range support now yourself, you would stack your support item so infinitely well and better down towards the bot lane.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah, that's the early game though. The thing which I'm really worried about now for Heretics is that you need to get a side lane advantage. You're going into these 5v5s, you have an immobile mid, you've got an immobile AD carry into an all-null. We saw T1 lose a game with Draven earlier in the week. And I think this means that Heretics need to be looking for something a little bit out of left field. You've got to look for something like a Rakan that can roam early, that can get kills in lane potentially as well. Because in the team fights, when you get through to those 5v5s, you're outranged by the Jace and the Varus, you're outranged by the Ornn ult, and you have 2 immobile carries. Actually, for me, this comes down to side lane matchups and whether Mercer can help snowball the map to that point.
It's going to be really interesting. I did just get confirmation that this is Vito's career first Jace game as well.
It is.
So he's busting out a few of these in the game so far, and in the season so far, actually. And I'm really curious to see how these two compositions are going to function, because it seems like a composition that was more like last year, rather than now due to all the range supports that we're currently getting. But yes, Rakan usually super comfortable into Braum. Rakan has a hard time when he gets locked down, and he can play very freely into the Braum. And it goes to your point as well, Alex, where it's about roaming on the rest of the map. I'm curious to see how much influence Cersei is going to have. I think he's going to be super pivotal for XL. If you can get your top side going, and specifically Vito as well, it's going to be super solid to actually snowball those leads to the rest of the map. So we talked about it, XL. If you can find one point of attack, maybe you can send that into the rest of the map.
And we'll be looking forward to seeing if it's finally the day XL can bounce back, or if Team Heretics can lock up themselves alongside other teams into the first group stage of this new format in the LEC. But it's time for us to get onto the Rift.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else to Summoners Rift for Game 2 of Week 3 of the LEC Winter Split. I'm Quickshot, joined by Dagda. Just before we dive into the game, quick reminder that this is Vito's first ever Jace. We saw last week his first ever Twisted Fate for XL. A difficult situation to be in. We're looking at them to make the changes, because this is the team that hasn't lived up to expectations. Before we get to that, what do you make of the draft, Dagda, as we see the team's kind of just faffing about in the river?
Well, it's actually funny because this draft, I feel like, plays into what we're probably going to talk about with XL, is that the early game hasn't been as strong. This is, to me, for XL, where you want to try and have push in bot, push in mid, and then try and use the fact that you've just got vision, which I really like for them, to have Xerxes invade off the mid and bot lane pressure and try and just get in the face of Jankos, punish the fact that this Sejuani doesn't really have that early skirmishing power, especially without the melee mid lane, but at least Rakan's now melee, so kind of helps out a little bit.
It does just a little bit. I think really good call out there, specifically on the vision. I think specifically on Xerxes. That was a first pick Elise, right? Of all the potential champions available, we went unpicked and unbanned for the cat, for Yuumi. So that was a shock to me as well. But I think Xerxes is the man that I want to see find more of influence. I think he's been one of the quieter players in terms of Excel, now frankly the whole team has been struggling, but on a champion like Elise, it is integral to use that kit to your advantage.
It does feel like we're starting to get Xerxes like week on week trying to step up that pressure though. Week 1, he was basically a no-show. Week 2, we started to see him a little bit more proactive. On Elise, you have to be proactive. You have to make sure that you're getting involved or at least finding early plays. And although we traditionally think of Elise playing towards the lanes, I actually think in this scenario, playing with the lanes for invades is more than likely what we'll see for Excel.
Of course, when you think of the fact that Chase, the Varus, the ability to push and how powerful it is, ETA will use that accelerated shock blast to chunk out Ruby, use the dissonance and command attack of his own. No surprise yet that Draven pushing this way forward, and Xerxes could step forward, but he's going to have to cross this ward, so information will be gained by Team Heretics, and they're starting to back out for now.
Yeah, even just showing on the way, or sorry,